All righty, everybody. The much anticipated time to smash it up for the off season. Hey, we all made it. Oh, I heard the pop of a top.
Yes, we got to.
I should have brought a beer to the party. What's wrong with me? Oh my God. I'm like the kid at the BYU frat party. I'm beerless. I'm sorry. Yeah. He's Irish Rafael, managing editor of Warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang, and we are here on a busy Monday in the Warchant multimedia enterprise, where there's been a lot of news, a lot of moving parts, and that is why we're a couple minutes behind. There might be some news on the recruiting front coming down in the next couple of minutes. If it's good news, Ira is going to interrupt me and do his duty as the managing editor of Warchant.com. But here we are on a Monday night. Smash that like button, everybody, as you get into tonight's live stream. We really appreciate it. It helps us find more Florida State fans that are looking for great coverage, and they will find it here today on Warchant TV's program, Monday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. All right, Ira, take a big pull of that beer and tell me how you feel after a whirlwind of, what do you want to call it, 72 hours from the end of last week to right now. A lot of stuff has happened. Where's your brain at right now?
Man, I'm just fired up. I mean, it's again, like, this is why we had the countdown clock, Tom. This is why for the last 2 or 3 weeks we've had the countdown clock, because we just wanted to get to this point where, you know, again, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like next season. We can't tell you for sure what this team is going to look like, but good grief. We've shut the door on 2024, and now we're looking to the future. And listen, I'm sure everybody had their favorites. A lot of people were excited about Brennan Marion. A lot of people were excited about different names for defensive coordinator. But I think Florida State did really well. And, more than anything, I just love the fact that they've got guys who've coached at high levels and have experience and have coached winning teams at high levels at the Power 5 level. And I really feel like that was one thing that just seemed to be lacking a little bit this past season.
A lot of stuff was lacking, but no, I was just reading a couple of comments in the chat as well. We are in a place now where it does seem like credibility, resources are intersecting, and Mike Norvell Saturday night. Maybe this is the best place to begin. That looked a lot different. That press conference after the Florida game, that had a type of edge and anger to it, an emotion to it, Ira, where in Mike's eyes, I don't know if he was affixing them in your direction at any point, but because we can't tell where you are relative to the camera. I think you're off camera to the left, but he was a different dude after, and I don't think it was just about chucking a flag off the logo. He seemed to be in a fiery place and wanting to make absolutely sure that everybody understood that he knows how bad this season was, and the changes that were going to come pretty fast. What did you take away from that in that moment? Because you've been in just about every single one of his pressers here at Florida State. And then obviously looks like he followed through on that sentiment, like he said he would, pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think it. I think he truly has been embarrassed by what's happened this season. I think for his team to go out there and fumble 8 times. I mean, again, it's his offense, and he put a product out there that couldn't execute plays without fumbling. It was just a disaster. And again, like I said, going into that game, I did not think Florida's a special football team. I don't think they're great. I don't think they've done anything magical. They've just let these teams the last 2 or 3 weeks kind of self-destruct, and Florida State was more than willing to join that stretch. And so, the Gators get the win. Congratulations to them. But, I just think he's mortified probably to some degree by the way this team has played, especially the last 3 or 4 weeks. It's one thing, again, getting embarrassed at Notre Dame. You can kind of, it was awful, but you can kind of understand it. You're playing against a really good team. That's not a good Florida team, and Florida State just gave them the game. And so I think it just was a capper on an awful season. And he's at the point now, I think, where he doesn't have to try to placate guys, try to drag guys along, try to get them to keep playing hard and make it to the end of the season. That's over. So now I think, and again, I love the fact that he's got a couple of coaches that have reputations for being pretty hard line. And I think there's going to be a whole new message delivered to this team the next time they get back together, and I think it's desperately needed.
Yeah, well, and then that's part of it is how does it look, how does it sound when these coordinators take to the dais officially for the first time, in their roles at Florida State. I'm sure we probably won't officially hear from Gus Malzahn or Tony White until after signing day. Like it would be a tough haul to wedge in a presser this week. Would you agree with that, Ira?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was after signing day. So just to recap for people that haven't been on the site, if you've been at work and you're not refreshing warchant.com, I don't know what's wrong with you, but some people might not be. The Gus Malzahn hire has been made official. FSU released that information late this afternoon. Also, Tony White, the defensive coordinator for Nebraska that they've hired, is not officially on board yet in terms of FSU putting out a release. But we've talked to people who've said that the contract has been signed and he's locked in. So now you have two coordinators. And from what I understand, there could be more announcements coming as early as tomorrow. I think the background check process is going on for a couple of new assistants. And I think those could be announced as soon as tomorrow. So things are moving on, man, full speed ahead.
Well, and one of those names that people are speculating about in the chat openly, Gene Williams put it on the Tribal Council earlier today, would be another Nebraska coach to come along with Tony White to Florida State. And that would be, what's his name? Pot Roast? Terrence Knighton?
That's his nickname, is Pot Roast. Yeah, when he played, when he was a player, that was his nickname. And yeah, man, he's apparently very impressive. Nebraska, it sounds like Nebraska was not happy to hear that he's leaving as well. And yeah, I mean, it's just, again, we have to see how it all plays out with Florida State. They currently have two defensive line coaches, Odell Hagens at defensive tackles and John Papuchis defensive ends. It's probably been 10 years now, at least 5 years, where, people have speculated whether or not Odell at some point might, move into maybe a support role. He's coached, he's one of the longest tenured coaches in the country. And he's not that old. He just started coaching very young. And so he's, we'll see how it plays out with him and John Papuchis as well. But yeah, there's going to be more changes on the staff, and there's changes at a level that people don't even know about. I mean, there are lower level people who are moving on as we speak. So it's going to be a completely different staff, completely different really program when you think about the changes to the roster as well. So yeah, man, I'll be drinking a couple of these tonight.
There you go. How about one for every new incoming coach? You can get yourself in a real happy place by the end of the night. It's hard.
The tequila is never far either, Tom.
Well,
so we'll see how this goes.
There's a viewer that's trying to call you on that, and that's Tommy Jenkins, who says we can't officially forget the season until Ira has a shot at Don Julio. So I don't know if that's something that you want to engage in tonight, but I'm not going to stop you if you wanted to reach for that bottle.
How many shots of tequila do you need to actually really forget the season? I mean,
we can find out right here tonight. Set the over-under for us in the chat. How many shots of Don Julio would you like to see Ira do before the night is over? I'm going to set that number pretty high if it's me. This is where it gets a little bit difficult because, okay, you're right, Ira, to reset for everybody. We're so in it. Sometimes I forget to tell you that there's a forest instead of all these trees, but Gus Malzahn as offensive coordinator. Tony White is in as defensive coordinator. You don't know about all the pieces, how it's going to affect recruiting, the transfer portal. So I'm asking a terribly irresponsible question of you, but I'm going to do so. I'm going to power forward. We get to spring camp. It's day one of practice. You have 2 hours to go where you want to go on those practice fields. You are going to what side of the football to watch what coach, Ira?
Oh, man, that's a great question. I think, that's tough, man. I'm going to have to go bounce back and forth. We're going to have to bounce around and do some things at these practices, Tom, because I don't know where I'd go first. My guess is, knowing me and knowing you and knowing our roles on this staff, you and you're going to go to the trenches. Yep. I'm going to go to the defense. We're going to let Corey and Jeff watch the offense because they're the talent. They feel like they need to see the prime attractions.
They are the skill position players of this staff, right? And we are the trench monsters of the staff.
I'm trying to keep teams out of the end zone you're in the trenches, and Corey and Jeff can, they're high stepping into the end zone.
Yeah, that's it. We paved the way. So, all right. So I'll see you for those head-to-head drills. I'm sure it's acclimation day, but I do want to. I personally want to hear how it sounds. Is it Herb Hand that's the new offensive line coach? Could it be that he comes with Gus Malzahn from UCF? There's a guy who's been around a lot of places too. It kind of feels like, if you're of the mindset in the chat out there, if you're listening to this on the podcast, that people are excited for the coordinator hires, but they're really excited for the line decisions, the offensive line coach, the defensive line coach, if there is a change and there's some shuffling that goes on there. Just because trench play, especially on the offensive side, has been so bad that they get it. We've got a smart fan base out there. They know that if you don't have the O-line where it needs to be, the whole house of cards crumbles. And that's what this year was. It was a year that was based upon the notion, strategically, philosophically, that Florida State's offensive line was going to be really good. Not just average, not just good, but really good. And they couldn't have been more the opposite. And
good and deep. 10 to 12 guys you could win with.
Right. Instead, it was bad and deep. That was the hole that they dug for themselves. Bad, deep, still can't get out of it. So you see how fast it falls apart. And I think folks are really interested. I'm looking in the chat. I mean, here, Director Ben Spicer is on the go today, so I'm looking at the chat a lot more as we go live. But a lot of questions. So what's the offensive line coach situation? Are they going to be announced soon? Iris told you it might be in the next 24, 48 hours that you get some answers to this end. But those are really important decisions, not just because we want to see how they develop guys, but do they have a track record of being able to hit the trail too? They know they're connected to folks in the Southeast and can get some kids to come and say yes to Florida State, either through the high school ranks, Ira, in the 11th hour. You don't want to rule that out for this 2025 class, but then also for the portal work, which is going to be such a heavy lift over the next month.
Yeah, I think there's like 3 levels to it, 3 layers to it. One is the portal, the players that were at their previous schools that may jump in the portal have already jumped in the portal. There is a stream of players from UCF who have already jumped into the portal. Florida State, I think Matt Lacer is going to have a story up. I think, Gus Malzahn has already had conversations with at least one of those players. So you expect there's some UCF players that might be candidates to come to Florida State. Nebraska players who have jumped into the portal today might be candidates to come to Florida State. And then, as you said, the high school players. But I really think this staff, with what they're putting together, if the assistant coaches hires play out the way we think they're going to play out, with guys coming along with Malzahn and Tony White, I think they're going to be even more attractive in the portal for even the non-UCF and non-Nebraska players. Because I was talking to somebody in the program yesterday, and they said even before this was kind of announced, and maybe just early on in the Gus Malzahn news, that Florida State was getting good feelers from some of these guys who were jumping into the portal. The initial wave of players going into the portal, Florida State was getting really good feedback, better than maybe you would expect, maybe they expected after a 2-10 season. So I think, I just think that I'm not trying to build people up to be too excited, but the worry that a lot of people had a week ago, 2 weeks ago, a month ago was, even if they make changes, who's going to want to come here? I think it might be better than you think. And we'll see. Like I said, I don't want to build up too much, but the signs are really positive right now.
Well, I love the energy from Norvell in the presser after UF. There was a part of me watching it after we were done with the post-game show that said, come on, man, where was this a month ago? Where was this 6 weeks ago? You weren't – it's not illegal to have that attitude after losing to SMU or losing to Duke, but I think he might have understood in that moment. At least he chose to. It ain't going to get better. I've got to wait till this is all over, and then we're going to start clean. And you can see that energy has been brought into the offseason.
My theory is, and I'm not saying it was the right thing to do, my theory is he was trying to get the best out of especially some of the older guys that he kept saying it. There are guys he's seen do better before. And I think he was trying to bring that back out of them, bringing them along down the stretch run, but it just never happened. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think there are some older guys on this team that know they're not going to play in the NFL. They know this season was a disaster, and they just want to move on. And that's unfortunate. And nobody, we can all sit here and say that we wouldn't do that if we were in their shoes. But the reality is the reality, man. And like some of those guys have been, through an incredible journey through their first 4 or 5 years of Florida State, and now they're pretty much done. They're spent. And so that's what it looked like. So I just think, he could have gone scorched earth 2 months ago or a month and a half ago. I don't know that the results would have been any better. They are what they are. But now, like you said, man, the Band-Aid has been ripped off. You're moving in a new direction.
It's just funny because it's almost like he took off a mask and revealed, I get it, everybody. Oh, believe me, I get it as much as you get it. This is unacceptable. And here are the actions that follow the words. Because people were wondering, and I remember, Ira, you tried to caution people, we all did at different points on the network. But, he's going to make the change. If you think he doesn't have the guts to do it, or a different word, he doesn't have the stones, he does, but it's going to happen. And here it is. We'll see about more changes that are upcoming. A couple of announcements to make. First of all, a thank you to tonight's sponsor, as always, State Farm agent Russ Voorhis, for bringing you the program. He brings you the ability to watch the Smash every week now for 2 years and running. And we really appreciate Russ Voorhis sponsoring this show, as he has elements on warchant.com for a long time. But then he doesn't just sponsor Florida State content. If there is such a thing as a sponsor of an athletic program, well, that's what Russ Voorhis is, with his support of FSU Boosters and his support of FSU sports at large. A humongous, larger-than-life Florida State football fan and Florida State fan is State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. If you live in the states of Florida, Alabama, and Georgia, his services as State Farm agent, that's what he does by day. Russ Voorhis can be yours if you just find him at russvoorhis.com. Ira, I know as a customer myself, it's an outstanding experience. And then also you have consulted with Russ about insurance needs over the years.
Yeah, and he's just a good guy. Like I said, I mean, to start off with, it's somebody you want to talk to. And I can tell you this, Tom, he's pretty excited. He's pretty excited also, like us, to see this past season be in the books. And I think he likes the new direction. Especially the Gus Malzahn hire. I think he's pretty excited about that. I haven't talked to him since the Tony White hire, but I know he was pretty excited about Malzahn coming on board. And so, yeah, man. And, Russ does a really good job. He's got offices over there in Jacksonville if you're in that part of the state. But if you're not, if you're in the tri-state area, Florida, Georgia, or Alabama, he can definitely take care of you. And like I said, and those insurance is one of those things you don't really feel like you have to worry too much about it until you really need it. And Russ is a really good guy. He's got a really good staff, and they'll take care of you and give you all the information you need on quotes and compare to your current plan. And they're happy to get your business. And if you do talk to them, if you do reach out, tell him that you heard about him on the Smash, because he likes to know that he's dealing with some Noles out there.
If you live on the east side of the state of Florida, Jacksonville Beach, Orange Park are where the brick and mortar offices are. And if you'd like more information about how to reach out to Russ Voorhis and you're listening on the podcast, it's his name is the URL, russvoorhis.com, russvorhis.com. Coming up here shortly is Warchant lead football analyst Dominic Robinson. Now, Dominic has been studying tape on Gus Malzahn for days now. We're going to have a feature available on Warchant TV this week. It might break out into a two-parter, Gus Malzahn Auburn, Gus Malzahn UCF. Looking very much forward to getting his insights on that. Dominic does such a great job. And now Tony White will be broken down from an all-22 standpoint by Dominic Robinson. Tonight we talk generally with D-Rob about his thoughts about where Florida State is going, the transition process. And if you have questions for him, please feel free to file those away into the chat. He'll be joining us in just a few moments. We have some thank yous to issue. Spencer in Apollo Beach now, Spencer Ebling, thank you so much for your hearty contributions to tonight's program. He says, for the Warchant Trench Monsters. Love the show and the hire so far. Well, thank you, Spencer. Thank you very much. Let's see, Ira. Next up would be Dave in Bardstown. Oh, Dave's got an issue with Corey. Corey's going to vote for the guy who tossed our hat and spurned us on National Signing Day. Why not write in Herb Street or Bubba Cunningham? He's going to frame a photo of the Gator flag on our field like it's Iwo Jima. Well, okay, Dave, not too pleased. But hey, if Corey's going to Heisman vote for Travis Hunter, I think he gave that up anyway. He gave up that vote. But if he is,
no, he still got it. He still got it.
Okay, well, then that's his choice. Dave, also, why do they never release the photo shoot pics of coaches interviewing on their visit? It'd be nice to see Gus posing with a big tomahawk and play sheet, or Tony White sitting on a throne with a clipboard. That's a good point, Dave. You know, if they're going to do it for transfer portal kids and if they're going to do it for high school recruits, How about you have Tony White on one of those Game of Thrones style thrones with a Waffle House menu, getting ready to make some plays. Thank you for those two contributions. And to Eric now, in some ways, Mike and Gus are in the process of reinventing themselves. Mike reinventing his reputation as a great head coach, and Gus as an elite offensive mind, hoping both get there. There's no doubt for both of these guys, they have history together. They've worked together in the past. But Eric's correct, Ira. This is something of a 2.0 existence for Mike Norvell, and then Gus is simplifying his day-to-day job. He doesn't have to run a program from scratch anymore. He needs to be involved in recruiting and the portal and development. But the life as an offensive coordinator is far simpler than life as a head coach, especially in this era of college football.
Yeah, and there's going to be some dynamics at play here that are going to be interesting because you do have, I think Jeff talked about it, you guys talked about it today on Jeff's show, that it's Mike Norvell cut his teeth coaching under Gus Malzahn. And so now he's going to be the head coach that Gus Malzahn is working for as a coordinator. And again, I've talked to a lot of different people in the industry who've coached or been part of coaching staffs that Gus Malzahn was on. And he's known as, kind of a hard ass, and he can be a pain in the ass. And so I think that's a great thing. I think the dream scenario, and I think Coach Henshaw, and I'll probably write about this at some point in one of the Henshaw's house pieces. But, Bobby Bowden was known as the, kind of the gentle, especially as his career went on, he was kind of the grandfatherly kind of coach. But even when he was younger, Coach Henshaw says, Coach Bowden told the assistant coaches, your job is to be the bad guy, and then my job's to be the good cop. Now, if you guys aren't going to do that, then I'm going to come in and be the bad cop, but you're not going to like that a whole lot. And so, that's kind of, you want that relationship with the head coach and assistant coaches. I feel like one of the problems, in the staff this past few years is just certainly this past year, but at times over the last 2 or 3 years, I just felt like there were times where you've got players that have been part of that program for so long, and the relationships were so close with the assistant coaches. I just don't know how much bad copping there was. And so this is almost going to be like a new staff coming in and really laying the foundation of what things need to be, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. Mike Norvell admitted as much after the game on Saturday that the guys have not met the standard. And I think he was talking about in a lot of areas. So this is going to be good for him. But I do think to the point, this is going to be interesting for Norvell and Malzahn. Norvell's never really had this before. Somebody on his staff with this kind of stature. And Tony White on defense is going to have full autonomy on that side of the ball. So it's going to be interesting to see how Norvell evolves as his assistants do that as well.
Yeah, you're right. This is something we did talk about today, where if you're, the secretary, I know Mike probably has a few of them because he's a very busy guy, but the one who has the calendar before them, Monday through Sunday, how it all breaks down in a given week. What does Mike Norvell's calendar look like in 2025 relative to what it has looked like the last few years? I have to imagine the meetings he's taking, the subjects that he's filling his week with outside of practice are going to be very, very different. They just have to be. If you bring in a Gus Malzahn, I don't think you're sitting in every offensive meeting. Like, you can't. And that's probably a good thing in this day and age where there's so much more noise in the system that you need to be responsible for as a head coach. It seems like he's taken that very seriously. Ira, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. Mike said in a press conference setting, play calling's not an ego thing. If I need to give it up and I think we're going to be better for it, then I will. Again, this is him following through on those words with actions. If you want to follow through all the things that are coming up on warchant.com over the next month and over the next year of change, here's a special for you. This Black Friday special has expanded through Cyber Monday, and it's while supplies last. You get over 1 year of access to warchant.com for more than 50% off, plus a bonus gift. This is an outstanding deal for you at warchant.com. All of Ira's insights, all of Michael Langston, Matt Lasser's insights on the recruiting board, all the intel from Gene Williams and Ira and Jeff, and the content that goes along with it, breakdowns, discussions with the largest FSU fan base in the business at warchant.com. Sign up today. Go to warchant.com. No promo code is necessary. Just sign up for an annual subscription. You get 7 days of access for $1 and then 50% off your first year at warchant.com. Plus, this is the new special for Black Friday through Cyber Monday, a $20 gift code to Garnet and Gold. Incredible value at warchant.com if you sign up today. Warchant TV is always free. And make sure to hit the like button underneath the video right now. Subscribe to the channel. So much news coming, so much content coming with our next guest, Dominic Robinson. Before I sign off and I fill into the director's chair where Director Ben usually sits tonight, anything, Ira, that you want to go over, promote as the editorial side is on the screen right now before we get to the analysis side?
Yeah, Corey has a column on the new hires that he's going to post. He's already shared some of his thoughts on the Tribal Council, but he has a column that we'll be putting up tonight. A lot more recruiting news and portal news. Matt and Michael are working nonstop, working the phones, talking to recruits, talking to portal prospects. Because again, as you add these new assistant coaches, it kind of opens up new territory for the staff to go recruit. And so there's plenty of that coming. I may have to enlist you, Tom, into your editing skills as well, because we've got so much content to get up on the site, and we don't want to get backlogged. But still, actually have some stuff from over the weekend. They had a bunch of visitors who were here this weekend as well, and so tons of recruiting content going up till signing day, which is on Wednesday. But then also, as I said, team coverage as well. And I do think maybe as soon as tomorrow we're going to hear about some of these other assistant coaches. It's
octopus season for everybody. You got things on. You got levers over here, buttons over there, articles and podcasts and videos. This is what we've been waiting for. You can say, if you can sense the juice in our voices, there's a reason for it. One more contribution before we take a break and switch over to our football analyst Dominic Robinson. Jeremy says, I was at Ohio State, Michigan, and they offered me Ryan Day for our staff, and they would pay for all of it. It's funny how times can go so quickly from heady and being the toast of the college football universe to fire him yesterday. And that's where Florida State fans understand it better than most. We're going to be back in 15 seconds here on Warchant TV. Ira and D-Rob are going to take you home and discuss these hires in more depth. They share the stage again in 15 seconds right here on Warchant TV.
Contact Russ Voris for an auto quote today.
D-Rob, my man.
My guy. I missed you last week.
I know. This is like
good to be back with you.
Dude, you just, man, you're with a different host every week. It doesn't phase you. You don't have to have the same co-pilot every week. And,
no, I'm good. I'll fly. I'll fly solo. Yeah, I'll fly with whoever I need to get the job done.
Your guy,
I got hot takes I need to get flying out. So
your guy Chris Ricks was in town this weekend. He came to the game with his sons.
Yeah, he texted me a picture of his sons with Coach Norvell and asked me if I was in town.
Yeah, you were busy, but
I was.
But that was it was cool to see him. He actually came by the press conference afterwards, talked to Corey and I, and introduced us to his kids. So it was really cool to see him back. And yeah, man, it's exciting times, dude. I mean, this is the one thing about sports, right? Is as bad as your season goes, the good news is you get another season. Like there's a new season to look forward to. Are you how are you feeling about these hires?
Well, that's the fun part about being a fan, right? As a player, you hate that because eventually they run out.
Right.
You only get 4 of them. So it's fun. It's why I'm a lifelong Laker fan, being from LA, and so it's one thing that you could. Yeah, I try to impart my sons to be fans of. I don't care that if they're Laker fans, but just fans of someone. Because your team is not always going to be popping the champagne at the end of the season, your personal team,
right.
But if you're a fan of a team, you do always have the next season. If you're a player, you don't. So it's helpful to have a team, and so yeah, this is exciting. These are some good hires, and it's a good time because we didn't have many over the last 3 months. So
thank goodness we weren't doing the watch-alongs this season, Tom.
Oh, I couldn't have. Oh man. Yeah. This is a good year to not have to watch along. As much as I was banging the table to make them better and have more of them and all of that, this year I would have been tapping out. Not even halfway through the season, I'd have been, begging Gene to get me off the watch along.
The screen would have like when there's technical difficulties and the colors come up on the screen and it just like goes blank. Yes, please. There you go. Good job, Tom. That's what that would have showed up.
That'd have been the watch along for sure. Yeah. So it's good, man. It's go ahead. I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I was gonna real quick, a couple things. One was when you look at this reset, I know you and Tom are going to do a deep dive into Gus Malzahn's offense historically and currently. So people are, stay tuned to the website and to the YouTube channel for that content. I want to ask you, like, big picture. To me, what this feels like, what Mike Norvell and the administration is doing by keeping Mike Norvell in place, but letting him clean house, both of his coordinators and I think other assistant coaches, and probably a lot of players on the roster. I think what they're trying to do is get the same effect of a coaching change, but keeping the same head coach. Because I think the hope is that everything that was stale, everything that wasn't resonating with players, everything that was not working anymore, you bring in all these new guys and you bring in a lot of new faces on the roster. It gives you a chance to reset without having to fire your head coach. Is that first of all, do you think that that's accurate? And second of all, how feasible do you think that is to work?
I think that's absolutely, you nailed it right on the head. I think that that's really interesting because if you ask me, that's expedited a little too much. Like doing that in coming off of a undefeated season. Like, I think what we're seeing is really unprecedented in terms of like staff rebuilding it's not even a rebuild. This is just a completely new organizational structure. I mean, it really is. And like Tom said, this isn't like, oh, we're going to kind of shine up the old thing, the old car. It's like, we're going to tear, like you said, we're tearing the engine out. We're replacing all the interior furniture, and the external shell is the same. It's still garnet and gold, but everything else is different. And so, like I said, I think the practice structure is going to change. I think looking at both the offensive structure and the defensive structure in terms of formations and plays, I think they'll be totally different. It's really, really interesting. And I don't think we've ever in college football seen a organizational restructure this quickly, from a good season. You see it when teams suck. You saw when Nebraska was really bad when they went from the option to the spread. Okay, that made sense in the day and age, but I don't know that we've ever seen in a 1 year span of a team being good enough to be a national champion. And then a year later, both coordinators being fired and the whole thing being cleaned out. I do think that we're seeing a direction of college football, though, that I think it's important to note, in that we are in the age of super staffs. Like, the next thing is the super staff. And I think I may have said this on this show, or maybe on our show with Tom and I. This is something that Coach Saban has been doing forever, and maybe it's a couple other schools in the SEC. But this is the new model. And essentially, you've got 3 head coaches now on one staff.
Right.
I mean, Tony White was being looked at, or is being looked at, maybe still as a head coach or a potential head coach. Obviously, Gus Malzahn has coached in the national championship game in the SEC. Coming out of the SEC, he's a longtime head coach, and then obviously Coach Norvell. this is going to become a very common thing within college football, with the restrictions loosening up in terms of, paying staff or on-field staff. We're going to start to see, Chip Kelly leaving UCLA as a head coach to become a coordinator at Ohio State. I'm telling you, man, this is going to be the next thing, because the money is so great now. People are going to start taking jobs that, in the traditional sense, seems like a step down. A guy going from a head coach to an OC in the traditional sense, but nothing is traditional anymore. There is no tradition. It's all been torn up. It's no longer what we knew it to be. So, I thought that, that's the interesting part about all this, is that, I'm thankful. The reason why I'm excited about this is we're at the forefront of this. If we're not 25 schools behind. Right. There aren't a bunch of schools that have done this. Like I said, Ohio State did this. Alabama had been doing this forever with Coach Saban, and then everyone was trying to catch up, to him. And I think Kirby's doing this. I think Kirby's got a couple, head coaches and guys that are going to getting hired away and things like that. But you're going to start seeing this a lot more. So.
It almost went under the radar when Saban was doing it, not because people didn't know it was happening. We all knew it was happening, but because they've been so successful that whole time, it never felt like, oh, he's doing something new. It's just, everybody joked about how it was the home for wayward coaches. He would rehabilitate Sarkisian or Lane Kiffin or, Bill O'Brien or any of these guys. He'd bring them in, and then they would spend some time there and then go start, Loxley, all these guys that would go then get head coaching jobs. But you're right. I mean, this feels different because Florida State went 2-10. Yeah. It didn't feel that drastic when Saban was doing it. But the other thing, real quick, I wanted to touch on, you mentioned something that I think is going to be real fascinating, is how practice structures might change. I actually had a great conversation the other day with Mickey Andrews about what happened when Jimbo came in. And he was talking about, that Jimbo was the first offensive coach of Florida State to come in and suggest that we don't tackle to the ground because they hadn't done that at LSU. And Mickey said, he was like, what now? And Jimbo's like, yeah, we don't do that. We don't tackle to the ground in practice. And Mickey said, well, let me go talk to Coach Bowden. And he said he talked to Coach Bowden, and I'm sure he's fine with me telling this story, but he said he talked to Coach Bowden, and he said, Coach, Jimbo doesn't want us to tackle to the ground in practice anymore. And Bowden asked Jimbo why, and Jimbo explained it. And then Coach Bowden said, he looked at Mickey and he said, can we do that? Like, are you going to be okay to run your defense if we can't tackle to the ground? And Mickey said, I'll do whatever you want. Sure, I can do that as long as he promises to score about 3 extra touchdowns a game, because I can't guarantee that I'm going to get as many, it's just but that gives you an idea. When you bring in somebody like a Jimbo Fisher, they're going to have their way they want to do it. And you're bringing in basically 2 guys at that level or higher level, really. Gus Malzahn, Jimbo hadn't been a head coach at that point. So that Norvell's going to have to kind of mix all that, right?
Yeah, no. So, and I love that. That's a great story, because I had, obviously great firsthand knowledge as a guy who played for Mickey and then was close to Jimbo. So I started my coaching career there at Leon High School when Jimbo took over at Florida State. So I was very close to the program and was around for a lot of that. And I remember how unbelievably uncomfortable that was for everybody involved, because literally you're essentially telling Mickey, like, we're not going to play football. Like, that's a different sport. If we're not taking guys to the ground and trying to take heads off, are we even playing football? Like, what are we doing out here? And so that was really uncomfortable for anybody who had been around for Coach Bowden, the coach, where Mickey had the authority to choose what we did. And then that transition was really, really rough. It was really not comfortable for anybody.
and you add Amato to the mix, and he's associate head coach or whatever he was, and
right. Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about just philosophically living in different area codes. I mean, those guys weren't in the same country. And I remembered feeling that. I remembered telling someone the whole program is so different from when Coach Bowden was here that it felt like two different, like a completely separate family. But if there were people still there from the old family, it's like a new family moving into your house that you lived in for whatever, 25 years. It's like, what the heck is going on? And so, yeah, I do think that that's going to be an interesting thing to follow. And now that these guys come in and the practice structures change, how is that transition for the players? How are they accepting what is now changing? It's a lot easier to do that when you're 2-10, right?
Right.
And it's a lot easier to do that in today's day and age where maybe 25 of your players are different and they come from different schools, with the transfer portal. So, with that being the case, you may have, a dynamic that works that typically wouldn't, like let's just say in the Jimbo, Mickey Andrews era. It didn't work very well because all of those players were homegrown. Those were all, those guys were all Bobby Bowden players. They didn't come from another college. Right. They didn't play somewhere else. They hadn't played for somebody and then come here. They knew one way to play college football. And so I'm so interested. I think, I'm not excited I shouldn't say I'm not excited. I'm excited because it is, you're always an optimist in the beginning. But my excitement is towards, again, like I said, these are very, very competent guys. And we are at the forefront of a day where we hire, head coaches to do coordinator jobs.
Right.
The coordinate, head coach potential or ability guys will have coordinator jobs. So I'm excited that we're not waiting and seeing that 20 other teams have done this or schools have done this. And then we jump on it, late. Right. And, by that point, there's 72 coaches who are all on staffs as coordinators that, could be with us. So, but yeah, the practices will be different and that will be a transition and that, it won't be all pretty. And I'm super interested for Norvell. I don't know that he's ever had a guy like Gus, running an offense under his roof. Like I said, it's kind of an outsider coming to live under your roof where you won 13 games.
Yeah, but you need them to help pay the rent.
You do. You got to have them. Yeah, you wouldn't be in that house anymore. If you don't hire those guys, you're probably not living in that house anymore. Right. So you need them. Yeah, you got to have them. They're definitely necessary. So it'll be it's going to be a fun experiment to see if it works.
I'm gonna ask you one more thing, and then we'll switch over, and Tom can give us some of the questions from the chat. But first, real quick, I wanted to say, man, I love the comment you made last week on the Smash after I got off to Tom about coaching receivers differently, and that different receivers should be coached differently. And the reason I love that is because one thing that so many coaches have said through the years is on different staffs, I'm not just saying with this staff, is that, they want their running backs, they want the receivers to be interchangeable. They want guys that can do everything the same because they don't want teams to know based on personnel, this is what you're going to be doing. And I get all that. But to me, very much seems like basketball. Like if you've got the post guys do different drills than the guards do. So why do we teach 6'7" receivers all the same things that we have 5'11" receivers doing? But the way you explained it, I thought was perfect. What I want to ask you is, can that apply to the running backs as well? Because I feel like, man, I just feel like the running backs, there were times the last, throughout Mike Norvell's tenure, but certainly this past season, where it's like, man, it felt like you might try a different guy in that role, but I feel like they want everybody to be able to do everything. How do you balance that as a play caller or a coordinator, getting the right guys in those situations without giving up to the defense what you're going to be doing?
Yeah, I think that really good question. So the running back position is probably the worst coach position of all of the positions, skill positions, especially.
You're talking about in sports. You're talking about
in sports. Yeah, just
football,
in general, not at Florida State specifically or any school or team specifically, but and that is a big part of it, is that there's two things, and this exists in all sports, in every position, is doing what you've always done is a huge mistake. It's a big no. The guy that coached you, whatever, 25 years ago or 30 years ago, is obsolete at this point. You cannot coach your kids. The players are so different. The skills and abilities are different. The job, requirements are so different. But a lot of coaches are doing that. And that happens at the running back position more than any. Is they just coach to do what they were coached to do for so long. And then the other thing is, guys are coaching, like you said, they're coaching the same, two running backs in the same room, the same way. And there's probably no position that's, more guilty of that than running back, I would say. And again, it happens at all sports and all positions, but yeah, you have to coach guys differently. Now, that is the reason why you see it so much, is that's really difficult. Like, you only have so much time. The playbook doesn't change in terms of the amount of plays and the things that you need to teach within a film session. And it's a lot of work for a coach to be able to coach that way. You have to be absolutely competent in your abilities, and you have to know the ins and outs of your position like none other. And for running backs, it's called a movement profile. So it helps me a lot because I work in the performance realm also. So understanding someone's movement profile and their speed profile would help you, assist you a lot in teaching a guy, hey, you can't hit that thing downhill the way that this guy does, because his acceleration is 0.2 of a second faster than yours, and that hole is going to close. So you have to run this thing this way with this amount of patience, and then maybe it hits backside. But within doing that, I mean, that just me explaining that to you right there, you see how much time that takes.
If you're doing it individually
for every play,
6
all
different
season,
backs.
For 6 different backs, so you have to be efficient with your words. You have to know it and understand it in the ins and outs of, like I said, the movement profiles of each guy, size and abilities. You have to understand their mind, the way that guys see things, their vision, their perspective. There's a lot that goes into that. So it takes a lot, in terms of, in terms of the work in order to do that. But I do want to say another thing that I left out in terms of coaching wide receiver play. And this may be the biggest thing, maybe bigger than even understanding to not coach cookie cutter and telling guys one way. And this kind of goes with recruiting also. Your personality, maybe more than any other position, is so important to a wide receiver coach, because you are managing a bunch of egos. And we get the prima donna, sort of tag a lot in the wide receiver room and all of that. You are handling a bunch of guys who all think that they should have 10 catches every game.
Right. That
is way more difficult to handle or deal with than teaching 5 different guys how to run a slant route. That is the biggest part of coaching wide receiver play, is how can I get all of these guys on the same page, with all of them knowing that no one guy is going to have 10 targets for 12 games. That's 120 targets a year. Maybe one guy's going to do that, and that might be it for the whole room, right? So that's going to be the most. Everyone, and then you just go down from there. The next guy's going to have 80. The next guy's going to have 60. The next guy might be the most important guy, but he may only have 40 targets. Well, how do you manage that? How do you keep him engaged in everything that you're doing as an offense? Because honestly, those are the best offenses. Or the guys who, when you get everything out of the guy who only gets 40 targets a season, those are the best teams. You know, when you look back at like some of those Alabama teams that had ridiculously good wideouts, you go, holy crap, Devontae Smith only had 40 targets in a year. How is that even possible? You know, he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. Well, making him completely buy into a whole season of 2 to 4 targets a game is a huge, huge strength of a wide receiver coach if you can get a guy to do that. So I did want to touch on that. I thought that was a really good question last week that I left that part out of it because the cookie cutter thing is a big part of it also.
No, that's good stuff. So from the chat, never lose your nerd as opposed to nerve. Asked, made a donation, appreciate it. Are you, I guess you or both of us, are we more happy for this hire than we would have been for Marion? He's probably talking to you specifically because you did a video about Brennan Marion, but do you like this hire, Gus Malzahn, more than you might have Brennan Marion?
No, I could go either way. I mean, the thing about coaching, and I said it earlier, it's the chemistry is everything. When it comes to creating a football team and building your foundation for the future, like the chemistry, and you only find that out through, like, if you're in science, dropping whatever, into the beaker. And that's when I find out, oh, shoot, when I put this in here, it explodes. Or when I put this in here, it turns blue. And so, I don't freak out about, getting too excited. To say same way with recruiting. It's like guys can be really good players, but not good for a team because of the chemistry. And so I don't get overly excited for any one recruit or any one transfer or anything like that, because until I see the chemistry of how all the pieces fit together, I'm on record as saying DJU really fit what we were doing.
Right.
And I thought it would be great. I would have never imagined that it could have been below 7 wins this year with him. So the chemistry didn't fit. It didn't work. And there are other factors that played into that. So no, I'm not overly excited, or I'm not disappointed that Marion is going to end up going somewhere else. Nor am I thinking that, this was a higher below Marion in any way, shape, or form.
I want to follow up one thing real quick on DJU, and then I've got another question I want to ask you. But I did want to say this because I've talked to a lot of people around the program. Everybody really likes DJ. He's very well liked. And I think there's a lot of people who feel really bad about how this whole situation played out for him, because he's kind of been villainized probably by the fan base. There were certainly a lot of people who felt like he was the problem. I think certainly over the last 6-7 weeks, we've learned that he was not the problem. And so I just want to say, I do not think he's going to stay at Florida State. I don't expect him to try to play here again. It probably is best for him to move on for a lot of reasons. But I do want to say, I feel like he did, and a lot of people around the program feel like it wasn't his fault. And I'm sure people are going to hear this and they're going to be like, oh, screw you. He stunk, whatever. Yeah. I get how you feel that way, but you've seen this offense with 2 other quarterbacks. It stunk with them too. And so I do, since you brought him up, I did want to say that I do feel bad for him. And I think a lot of people around the program feel bad for him about the way this all went.
For sure. He ends up being the scapegoat, and that sucks, because he's actually a really good player. And like you said, he's a really great kid. He's a phenomenal kid.
So I've got a question for you, but I'll go to Osceola Seminole first. What is D-Rob going to be focusing on going forward that will make you think we see a big difference on the field next season? Do you think it's more the talent acquisition, or do you think it's going to be that chemistry part, or what are you going to be watching and listening for kind of in the spring and during the offseason?
Yeah, I think for me, it's going to be, what happens up front. with the offensive line. I think that would probably be the one thing. And I do think when you bring in a Gus Malzahn, you are definitely sending a message to anyone, that knows him or has been around him that, it's going to be taken seriously, what those guys do and are up front on the offensive line. Like I'm going to have a deeper conversation with the guy who played quarterback with him. So I'm looking forward to that. But the one thing that he did text me is this guy is run.
Mm-hmm.
Like he really, really wants to run the ball. And
that's got to start with the mentality, right?
Correct. Right. And that's the type of mentality that I don't think he knows how to coach any other way,
right.
So that's not going to, certain coaches kind of come with non-negotiables.
Right.
I remembered feeling that with Trickett when Coach
Right.
Trickett was there. When he first got there, it was like nobody was his type of guy up front. And that was a non-negotiable. Like he wasn't going to coach at Florida State unless he could get his guy in there. And he eventually did, and they won a national championship. And I don't know that this, that he's quite, that Malzahn is quite Rick Trickett, but I definitely think he's very serious about having the mentality to run the ball up front. And so I think that changes everything in terms of the personality of the ball club. So I'm really looking forward to that. And honestly, we won't know any of that. I think spring will have like a good feel or indication, but I won't feel comfortable or confident in that until probably week 3 or 4 of the season next year. Because I never would have fathomed that this offensive line this year was going to be as poor as it's been. There was nothing you could have sold me to make me believe that. So
let me throw out a theory. Tom posted a question. I'll get to that in a second. But a theory that somebody I was talking to around the program had about the second half of the season, because you talked about. It's kind of shocking if you think about the big picture. It's kind of jarring to think you could be 13-0 one year, and 12 months ago this weekend they were hoisting up the ACC championship trophy, and now here we are, and you're basically clearing house of your program. My question is, or I guess the theory that somebody posited to me about the players were certain players was that once the season started going south and this season was not what they thought it was going to be, you have some guys who played a lot of college football 4, 5, 6 years, and this is probably the end of the road for them, and the team is going south. That and some of those guys have played through injuries and whatever else, particularly in the line of scrimmage, and that it's almost like Jeff has brought up the point, like the idea that they've quit on Mike Norvell. This person was saying, man, these guys have pretty much just done. Like they're just, they don't have anything more to give. Is that possible? Is that a scenario you can conceive that, man, I'm in my last year. I started in this program when it was in the dumps. We took it to the highest of highs. We got screwed out of the playoff. Now this team stinks. Man, when can I just move on with my life? Like, is that because the reason I think it's important is because I don't believe guys, at least mentally, checked out on Mike Norvell, but I think they did check out on college football. Yeah. Some of the guys on this team. I was curious your thought on that.
No, I don't see much quit. If that's the question, I don't think that those guys quit. I think you get more or you get extra out of guys who want to play for something bigger than themselves. And when you're no longer doing that, it's really, really difficult. Football is such a hard sport in terms of training and preparation, just week to week, regardless of the opponent. Just to do that for 12 straight weeks, 13 straight weeks, 14 straight weeks is such an arduous task. It's very, very difficult. And eventually you just get weary when, the thing that gets you through is, again, having something bigger.
Right.
It's knowing the prizes at the end. It's whether that's the NFL for some guys, whether that's college football playoff, the bowl game, whatever it is. And when all of that is gone,
right,
the day-to-day grind, you just are going to have a level of complacency that's not even going to be conscious.
It's not intentional.
And that's
right.
why I'm not. That's
right.
why I'm saying it's not
right.
quitting, because to me, quitting is a conscious act. It's a
right.
conscious behavior that you're choosing to not give effort.
Right.
I don't see a lot of guys choosing to not give effort. I see guys making decisions based off of their circumstance and their situation, which is, we're not playing for a bowl. We're not playing for a guy who's losing his job. We're not playing for a NFL
playoff. I'm not going to the NFL.
Playoff. So there's a lot of that, and that's that's obviously a problem. But the only way to kind of clear that or clean that is make sure you're playing games that mean something, games of meaning late in the season.
Yeah, and I thought the best, and I'm going to ask this question here in a second. I thought the best example of that was at some point midway through the season, John Papuchis, who's the defensive ends coach, said they basically told some of the defensive linemen, look, play for your, no matter how you feel about how the season is going, know that these scouts are watching you and play for the NFL. Like, use that as your motivation if you don't have anything else. And I think that's a valid point, and I get it, and I can understand it. But you're also basically saying that there's nothing internally to play for anymore. That they've, and that's not where you want to be as a program. And I think that explains, because that's so much stronger than just trying to put out good film, I think, for the NFL. Dave Doherty asks, what quarterback, if any, does Malzahn bring in? He's a run guy. Who works best? Let me add to that. Do you think these current quarterbacks, from what you've seen of Malzahn's offense, can those guys be option for that? Whether or not he needs to go out and get a more experienced quarterback or more dynamic quarterback, do you think these guys even fit with what Malzahn will be trying to do?
I don't want to say they don't fit, but I do think that there's a type of guy out there, a gritty, similar to a Will Howard this past cycle. Honestly, DJ, when he was healthy and running, not the DJ that we saw.
Right.
But I do think that you're looking at, bringing in a guy who is, is going to be a little bit more gritty and athletic and run the ball. So
now, is it gritty or is it game breaking? Or is it both?
I think in year one, it's probably more of a gritty, because I don't know that there's a game breaking guy out there, a Cam Ward, for instance. I don't know that this cycle has a Cam Ward. Miller Moss entered the portal. I think he's going to be the top, transfer option in the portal in terms of quarterback. He doesn't fit. I can't. Off the top of my head, I can.
If the kid at Kansas State were to go in the portal,
there we go. There's a fit, right? The Kansas State kid, that's a kid that fits, So, yeah, I mean, Haynes King. I don't know his deal, but
the deal with him though is he's got to stay healthy. Because I think that's where you get into the. You'd love to have somebody dynamic, but also somebody durable. I mean, that's man. There's no coincidence. He won the national title with Cam Newton, and Tim Tebow could run. I mean, that's why I always, it's like, yeah, man, I love the idea. People wanted Jordan Travis to run like that. It's like, yeah, man, you also got to get through the season.
Right. Yeah, it's not realistic. So I think that there'll be a guy, an athlete that they bring in, and I don't know. I've been told that we've got a freshman athlete that's sitting back there. And
somebody mentioned him in the chat. Yeah, somebody mentioned in the chat. Trevor Jackson. He's got a good arm too. He's a talented kid. He's a real talented.
Maybe he fits and ascends over Croman Hawk and those guys. I'll be interested to see. because a lot of times too, like a lot of these guys, when they change places, they evolve also.
Right.
So who knows? Maybe Gus, evolves into opening it up, and again, he's still being run first, but maybe he changed, adds a couple concepts. He's combining with a coach who's very competent on the offensive side with Coach Norvell. Maybe the combination of the two of them. You guys mentioned earlier, good cop, bad cop. I also think sort of run game, pass game. Maybe Norvell's the passing game coordinator, maybe not in title, but maybe that's how they work it out. And maybe that relationship, again, going back to my whole chemistry thing, maybe that's the chemistry that Malzahn needed to get over the hump and Norvell needed to get over the hump,
Right.
hopefully that's the case. And so in terms of quarterbacks, I don't know necessarily, who fits until we kind of see what is the direction of direction.
Looks like we might have lost D-Rob there. Hey, that's why I'm here behind the scenes, just in case, coming up the sideline.
I was like, is it my internet? Is it his?
Nope, his device got dropped, and that's okay. We're a little bit past time, but we usually like to go past with D-Rob because he's got a lot of insights.
I did want to answer one of the questions in the chat. So a couple of people brought up, when will we hear about other position coaches? We talked about it a little bit in the first half hour. I do think that from what I'm hearing, there might be a couple more announcements as early as tomorrow. And now they may not be officially from Florida State. They still haven't officially announced Tony White as a new defensive coordinator, which is a done deal. But I think we'll get reporting, whether it's through us or our guy Pete Thamel, who's got Jimmy Sexton on the hotline. They'll. I think we're going to hear maybe within the next day that maybe one or two more assistant coaches have been hired. So that should be coming soon. I think that we think there's going to be more changes as well. But we just the time frame on that is not as clear.
We are going to wrap it up here tonight, and we can bring D-Rob on the screen because his connection has been restored. But there he is. Hey, Dominic. I was here, man. I was here. That's why I was just warming up on the sideline. I was making sure my arms were ready to go just in case.
Glad you were quick on the trigger, man. You didn't waste any time. You got in there and were ready to go.
Just in case, you never know. But we really always appreciate your insights. I look forward to working with you this week on several of these videos. I love putting my learning cap on when it's time to go watch you break down the all-22.
Do we have time for me to ask him one more thing?
We do. And you know what? I'll stand by again. I'll be like Kyle Trask yesterday for the Bucks, who got in for 2 snaps.
You can stay if you want. I just want to ask one quick question.
I got to get the sponsor marquee on the screen. Right. Go for it.
Hey, man. So we haven't talked much about Tony White, and I know you're going to talk more about him on videos with Tom as well, the new defensive coordinator. But he has played a lot of 3-3-5. That's kind of the thing that a lot of people are talking about with that hire. I just wanted you to touch on, you just made the comment about like how a new coach may change the prospects for players on the roster because, a guy, Trevor Jackson, may not have been a perfect fit for what they were doing before, but maybe he would be with what Gus Malzahn's doing and vice versa. What about this roster? One of the things that's interesting, and I know you don't know all the young guys on this team from a personnel standpoint that haven't played yet, but they have recruited the last 2 years. They've recruited really well at defensive back. They've got a ton of really talented young defensive backs. And I've made the case, and maybe I'm wrong. I want to hear your thoughts. I've made the case that part of the reason I felt like they haven't been able to recruit linebackers is because I don't think they really feature linebackers. They play so much nickel and dime, and that it's now they started playing more 3 linebackers some this year because they were so bad at stopping the run. But I think I guess what I'm asking you is, if Tony White is known as a guy whose linebackers play at a high level, when he was at Syracuse, his linebackers put up crazy stats, and now you're putting 5 DBs on the field, 3 defensive linemen in different roles. How does that change from a recruiting standpoint what you can get based on how you feature different players? Do you think that changes much of the interest other players might have and transfer portal guys might have based on what he does defensively?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what I think. So when I watch him, again, I got to see him firsthand. SC played Nebraska just a couple weeks ago, so it's kind of fresh in my mind.
Sure.
And then I did watch this morning when it got announced. I went back and watched that film to kind of refresh my memory of my thoughts on Nebraska's defense and all of that. And what I see is, and what I think this will open up a little bit is, he seems to be incredibly versatile in his scheme. It's not, you're going to hear a lot about the 3-3-5 and whatnot, and it is, but it looks to me like it's like he's trying to get the best players on the field for the most, advantageous matchup. So that helps you in terms of recruiting. You don't have to be as specific in terms of, hey, I got to have a Mike linebacker this and a Sam linebacker here. And, it looks like the guys that he has, that he's deploying are very versatile. Right. And, you could have 3 safeties out there at one time. And I never saw that really with us, with the former DC. I loved Adam Fuller. I thought he was great, but the structure of the defense was, as I began to, as I really started to watch the film week in and week out, the structure of the defense was very predictable. I always knew where certain numbers were going to be.
Right.
I could turn it on and it was burned into my head that certain numbers were going to be in certain spaces. Just the little bit that I've watched Tony White so far, it looks very fluid.
Right.
Guys are in different places and doing different things and bringing pressures from different areas. And it looks, a lot more fluid. And that's how this game needs to be, and now because of what offense are doing. So I do think from a recruiting standpoint, that allows you to recruit more players because you can say, hey, I know we already have, 3 linebackers, but we can play a 4th at this 3rd safety spot. And we use them just like a linebacker. So you're still doing your thing and you're on the field. You can go recruit a 4th defensive lineman and say, hey, I know you think we're a 3-3-5, but we play 4 defensive linemen in this set. And so you can almost to the point where you can recruit a surplus in positions because anybody could play at any point in time. There's no, if I'm the 3rd best linebacker, I don't get on the field because we play a 4-2-5.
Right.
That becomes, to me, I think that's really important within recruiting. It's kind of the same thing you were asking about running back. It's like, man, if we only play a Greg Jones style running game, then Leon Washington never gets to play or Lorenzo Booker never gets to play.
Right.
I don't even get to recruit those guys because they watch the way we use Greg Jones. You want to, you want to sort of showcase that, hey, I got different ways to use different weapons.
Right.
And so that's what I'm looking when I'm seeing Tony White's defense. I'm seeing some of that, and I think for me that's exciting.
Yeah, I look forward to your breakdown because it looks like there's a lot of, those linebackers they can rush the passer, they can come up and run support, or they can drop back in coverage. There's obviously a lot of different things he can do. Well, listen, man, I appreciate the time, dude. And Tom's wrapping us down. We got to watch Monday Night Football. And but I can't wait to watch your videos, man. So have you guys already recorded the Gus Malzahn one, or you've just done your homework so far?
No, I've just been doing my homework, and we'll do a Gus Malzahn and a Tony White one this week and get it out to you guys, so you guys can get your first look at those 2 guys and what they're doing and how I think they fit within the guys that we already have there at Florida State.
Awesome. Well, thanks, man. And thanks to Russ Vorhis for sponsoring the show, russvorhis.com, russvorhis.com. He's an insurance agent, covers Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. Big time supporter of Florida State athletics, but also our show. So we really appreciate him for that. Thanks to everybody that made contributions and asked questions. Took part. Very lively chat tonight, D-Rob. I don't know if you were watching it, but there's a lot of chatter in the chat tonight. And so we appreciate everybody watching. And thanks again, D-Rob. And stay connected to warchant.com. Plenty more coverage on the coaching hires, but also recruiting as well. And we'll talk to you next time. And keep refreshing that YouTube to see D-Rob's breakdown of Gus Malzahn. I can't wait to see it as well. So thanks, D-Rob, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Love you guys. Go Noles.